All right, welcome back to another episode in our Women in Publishing Summit version 2019. This is our second year, and I'm really happy to bring back some repeat interviewees. Anne Rainbow was one of our most popularly viewed videos in last year's presentation. She talked about Scrivener. She runs a business called Scrivener Virgin, and she helps people learn how to use the program Scrivener. If you're not familiar with Scrivener, I'm actually going to reopen her video presentation from last year and add it as a link in this year's because it was a great presentation. And for anyone, it's a very difficult program to start using, but can be very, very useful, especially if your work is heavy in research or anything like that, where you need to be collecting a bunch of different information or different. Anyway, you can watch last year's to find all about Scrivener. But this year, we're going to talk a little bit about some other topics, and we're going to talk about self-editing. And Anne has been writing and editing since 1979, y'all. So she knows a thing or two about this. So some of you weren't even born in
Oh,
1979, and that is just blows my mind in itself. But anyway, so we're going to talk about the importance of self-editing and really knowing how to prepare your work. Largely, I would guess Anne's going to tell us so that it's not as much work when you send it to a professional editor and so that you don't spend as much time and money in editing. And because I explained to Anne before that you may hear this, I'm having a difficult time with my voice. So I'm going to ask Anne to introduce herself today and tell us all the important things that we need to know about her.
okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me back. It was a great joy to be one of your top speakers last time. I'm really happy to be back again. Yes, I started writing in 1979. As I say before, probably a lot of your viewers were even born, but it was when my second child was born, and I had to give up my full-time job. I was a teacher then, and I had to give up my full-time job, and I was going stir crazy, frankly. So I applied for a proofreading job, but was given a publishing contract. So I ended up writing several books. And then later, when the kids were a bit older, I went back into teaching, became an exam, and then wrote lots more books. So I didn't get into fiction writing until the middle 1980s. So maybe still some of your listeners were still not born then. I'm not even dreamt of. But anyway, in the Middle Ages, I had a few family traumas, which I won't go into, but it resulted in me writing a lot of poetry. And then I joined some online writing sites, and that's how a lot of writers do end up getting to know other writers. So I progressed through flash fiction and short stories, novels, and so on. I've done NaNoWriMo many, many times, in the last 10 years. And I've written a few short plays, but it doesn't matter what I'm writing. The first draft, doesn't matter how rough it is, before you show it to anybody, and I mean anybody, it needs to be edited. So now most writers, I'd say almost 99% of writers, have no expertise whatsoever in editing. You know, they might not even have an awful lot of expertise in writing, frankly, but they have no training in editing, but they just do their best. They show their work to their friends, maybe their family, maybe a writing group if they belong to a writing group, and they get some feedback. And people say, "Gee, it's amazing," because they think it is amazing. And that's all very well getting that kind of feedback. But friends and writers who haven't any training in editing are likely to miss quite a lot of stuff that really needs fixing. So you think it's okay, and you send it off to someone, thinking it's okay, like to an agent maybe, and that can ruin your chances of ever getting published because first impressions count. So
Mm-hmm.
if your novel is full of typos and it's got continuity errors and it's got loads of things just plain wrong with it, the things that an editor would have fixed, the agent won't even bother reading it, frankly. They will look at it thinking, this needs a lot of work and needs a heavy edit, and a heavy edit costs money. They're busy people. They want to have material coming in from writers who know what they're doing and are producing polished work. So if your manuscript needs a heavy edit, it just won't pass muster. It will just be, dead end. So some people might say, well, that's okay. I'm going to self-edit. That's okay. I don't have to go to an agent. I don't have to go to a publisher. But you're fooling yourself because you can publish it. It's dead easy. Well, not dead easy, but it's not impossible to take your novel from, I know, wherever, edit it yourself, and then you can publish it. And you will produce a poorly edited book, and it will be judged by your readers to be poorly written. They won't realize that you're an amazing writer and it just wasn't edited. They will assume that you're a bad writer. So that gives a really poor impression of you. And if it's your first book out there, it probably will be your last. So, because no one's going to buy your book. If they've read one, they think, well, it's not professional. It hasn't been done properly. The first impressions really do count, whether it's to an agent, whether it's to a reader, even if it's just to your writers group. Out of sort of politeness, the best you can do is to edit it enough so that they're not kind of scrambling through the typos to read what you've written. And as you said earlier, if you accept that you have to pay for an editor, if you self-edited it, whatever you're paying for, you'll get so much more for your money, because they will lift your manuscript that much more. If they have to wade through putting in punctuation or something, they will just get tired of your work anyway, and you won't get a good job from them. So it's really important. I think all writers should learn how to self-edit, just basics, you know.
All right. So you started off by saying most people don't know anything about editing, which is true. Like, very few writers come in knowing all the grammar rules, all the spelling rules, all the copy editing rules. So what are some ways that what are some tools that people can use? How can they learn the skills of self-editing?
Well, I devised the red pen editing system a long time ago now as a way of overcoming editing overwhelm. Now, most people start editing and then they give up because they just get swamped. They get despondent. They, just is such a hard process, they think. So I devised the red pen editing system, a simple 10-step process, which encourages you to edit when you are best placed to do so. So you start off, on the right foot. You edit efficiently, so you have a system that works, and you come out the other side with a sense of humour. So instead of saying, "Oh, I'm editing," and getting all upset, you just say, "Well, that's another one, under another task." You can see you're making progress. It's all explained in my book. It's the red pen. What is it called? Editing the Red Pen Way: 10 Steps to Successful Self-Editing. It's not a long book. I also have some online courses, of course, which tackle individual topics, and I have workshops and things I run during the year. But the book itself is a kind of first step. So if people get a copy of the book and read it and action it, that's a good plan. That's a good plan. But there are things like, how to do pruning, what's good dialogue, how to punctuate your dialogue, how to do punctuation full stop. A lot of people don't really understand. And American's different from English.
Yeah.
So, we put out, at the end of a bit of dialogue, we would put our full stop before the closing quote. The Americans put it the other way around. So you have to understand not only the basic rules, but also which rules apply in which countries.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not ever so straightforward, but it's not impossible to learn.
Right. Okay. So you had sent over some tips that you wanted to share with the audience. Would you like to go through some of those tips? And I'll stop you if I have questions when we're chit-chatting here.
Well, I think one of the important things is actually to become a better writer. If you never make any progress as a writer, the editing just doesn't get any easier. But while you're editing, you should be learning how you could write better in the first place. But as a writer, we all accept that we use tools like pens and paper and keyboards and laptops and what have you. But we also use language, the language that we use to speak every day, words, sentences, and paragraphs. And they, as you said before, have spelling and punctuation and grammar, which not everybody knows about. I went to school in the 1950s and 60s when grammar was on the syllabus. By the 1970s, in the UK, it wasn't being taught. Mm-hmm. So, let's not go into politics, but it just came off the curriculum. And essentially, a whole generation did not understand and were never told it was important. It was all about creativity in those days. Just write whatever. And of course, with the introduction of things like text speak and, things happen to the language. But when you're writing a novel, it needs to be whole words and whole sentences and whole paragraphs and what have you. So there's such a lot to learn just in the grammar thing. But there's also skills about novel writing, about structure, about plotting, how to tell a story in the first place, characters, characterization. It's an endless list of things that you could learn about. So I would say tip number one is you should invest some time. Be prepared to invest some time in acquiring writing skills. Mm-hmm. Before you worry about editing your writing, become a better writer and sharpen up the tools that you already have. If you're good at some stuff, brilliant. And then you just need to add some extra things you're good at. I've literally, in the last 3 or 4 years, because I hadn't written novels before I started writing novels. I started and I knew nothing. I just thought, oh yeah, I can write a novel, and then you write one. It's not very good. So in the last 10 years, I've learned a lot. I follow K.M. Whelan. He does a newsletter always has good articles on how to do something I need to know about, basically. So sign up for newsletters of writers who are prepared to share their expertise. Lots of them will share it for nothing, so it's not like you're paying for a course. And you can learn from them. But you could take a course. You could sign up for a course. You could go to a writing workshop. There might be one near you. We've Patsy Collins and I are doing one in March, which I think is before this will go out on air. So, but people can sign up for the following year. That's for new writers. And in our locale, we also have what we call the Wednesday Writers, which is not every Wednesday, but once a month or so. And I host that. So wherever you live, there will be workshops or courses, you know, which cost a little bit of money, but at the same time, you will learn such a lot. So my main tip, the first tip, is become a better writer. Then your editing's not quite so hard.
Yeah, I'm in South Carolina in the United States, and we have a state writers guild organization, and it's not very expensive to join for the year. I think it's somewhere between $50 and $75. So
Yeah.
not a huge fee for the year, and they host a weekly gathering in local areas where you can go in and bring what you've been writing on, and you can submit it to be critiqued by the group. And to me, I think that's so important to share your writing. And I know a lot of people get very scared about doing that, but to hear other people's perceptions of what you've written with an open mind, with saying, okay, you know, they're providing you always. The thing I always tell people is you have to remember when somebody gives you constructive criticism, it's making your writing better if you will accept it and listen to it. And I think those types of workshops are just phenomenal because it really gives you the opportunity to hear, because we get locked in our own, oh my gosh, this is the best sentence anybody has ever read in their entire life. And then people read it and they're like, I have no idea what you're trying to say here. Wait, are you talking about this character or this character? And is this future or is this in the past? And all of a sudden you're like, oh. So yeah, I love that idea to just to get involved with other writers and workshops.
If you do NaNo, the National Novel Writers Month in November, there's usually a local library. There's certainly a region, and the regional ML probably will be organising writing. So that's a time to jump on the bandwagon, if you like, because that's when all the writers come out of the woodwork and they, you know, come out into the sunshine and they turn up in your local library. So you just go along at that time and join them, and they will have probably free meetings for the whole of the year. In Cornwall, theirs are going to start in January. We've just had the Thank God It's Over, and they're going to kick off in January with their first of their meetings during the year. And I think they're going to try and meet more regularly, not just every, you know, once a month. I think it's going to be weekly. So there's bound to be something to go along to, and mixing with other writers is really important. Have you come across Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way? I've got it here.
I am familiar with the title of the book. I'd forgotten who wrote it. Yes.
Now, what she advocates, apart from the morning pages, which is a way of unlocking your creativity, she also advocates what she calls an artist date. So, you know, once a week, once a month, whatever, you do something where, as an artist, it's not just writers, this is for any creativity thing, is to unleash your creativity by reconnecting with nature, by reconnecting with other people, weird people like you, not you, but us, you know.
I'll take it.
You know, but if you're a writer, you know you're a bit different, you know, from normal people. And so when people say, "What are you doing these days?" and I say, "I'm writing another novel," they just glaze over and think, you know, she's a weird woman. So basically, if you have an artist date, you get together with other artists and you talk about your craft and you share, as you say, you share each other's stories. That thing about reading out your story, it's really hard for a writer to share anything, just even to give somebody a piece of paper with it written on, but to actually say it out loud, that is so frightening. And one of the things when I do workshops, we try very hard to get everyone to read theirs out in the nicest possible way, you know, most supportive environment, because if they do that, if they go across that threshold, it liberates them, and suddenly they are empowered to listen to what people have to say about their story. And as you say, everything's going to be constructive criticism, but criticism makes it sound like it's not good enough. Right. Whatever it is, it can be made better. It's not that it's not good enough, it can be made better. So right. Yeah, so become a better writer. You can do that by going on courses, you know, mixing with other writers, reading a lot. You should be able to get tips through reading.
So true.
That was my tip one.
That was your tip one. Did you have other tips for us?
I do have more tips, yeah. Shall I go
Keep them
on?
coming. Keep them coming.
Okay. Well, my second tip would be that one of my taglines is you love writing, but you hate editing. And the number of people I hear that say, I hate editing. So this is a change of mindset for people. You have to convince yourself to embrace the editing, not just as an administrative chore where you think, oh, I've got to do the editing today, but you've actually got to go, yippee, I'm going to do my editing today. And look at it as an opportunity to lift your game, because whatever words you wrote in the first place, you can make them better. Odds are you can make them better. I did a course with Joan Dempsey called Revise with Confidence. It was brilliant, because you take what you think is pretty good and you think, oh, I think it's pretty good, and then she shows you that it can be better.
We love Joan.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Joan too.
But she teaches you how to polish your words and actually choose every single word with care. So it is important to learn to enjoy that stage, because unfortunately the writing doesn't take long, comparatively speaking, to the editing. So if you hate the editing, well, that's just making life horrible. So I say, if they get a hold of my book and read it, and don't just read it, you have to apply the task. I had one lady who said, I read your book, it's really good. I said, oh, thank you. And then about 6 months later, she said, I read your book and I tried to do some of the tasks. It's really good. And I said, yeah, that's the whole point. Don't just read it and be a bystander. Cheer from the, do what I said. And so, and it'll work. And there are some basic tasks in that book. I think there's about a dozen tasks in there that I just throw in. So if you apply them to your writing, any bit of writing that you've got, it will make it better. I guarantee that. So yeah, my next tip.
All right, moving along. I was going to ask one quick question though, actually,
cool.
that led me to wonder, do you think that people should complete their entire manuscript before they go back and start the editing process? Okay.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you for why. I've just gone through Nano and I've done 50,000 words. I'm nearly at the end of Act 1, which is a bit galling because that means I've got another 50,000 still to write. Well, while I was writing, I had planned it. I had done more planning than I ever have done before. I had all the scenes mapped out for the whole book. Okay, so in theory, all I've got to do is write the words. Now, I was in a scene not far from the front, and I had my main character go through a walk, sits on a bench, and looks across a golf course. In the distance, she sees a man with a dog. Now, that dog was not planned. He was not part of my plan. And I'm typing away, thinking, "Oh, that's interesting. I don't really like dogs much, but okay. I don't mind having a dog in my. Perhaps the man's going to be important. Perhaps he's going to be her next love. I don't know." And I just let it go. And then she goes home, and the next day she goes out. She walks to the same place, and she sits on the bench, and she sees them again. And I think, okay, well, obviously these people want to be in my novel. And so basically, over 2 or 3 days, each time this woman went out for her walk, she bumped into this man and his dog and got into conversation. And then it dawned on me. The reason the dog's there is because he's the one that's going to find the dead body. Now, at that point in time, I didn't even know there was going to be a dead body. But it suddenly came into my head. Now, the thing about it is, when you write that first draft, there may be bits that you haven't tied up. Now, when I finish writing that first, I need to go back and I need to make sure those scenes where the dog comes in are sufficiently spaced out that the reader won't spot that the dog is crucial to the story. Mm-hmm. Now, you can't get to sort of halfway through and then go back and map out chapter 1, because you don't really know what's going to happen later on. Things can change. So You must finish all the words and have a big break before you go back and start putting it together. I don't even put it into chapters. I just have lots of scenes. And then when I've done all of the scenes, then I think, are the scenes in the right order? Do I need to slightly rearrange them a bit? Space things out a bit better. And then I put them into chapters, and then I worry about whether the chapters have a good beginning, middle, and end, and that kind of stuff. Okay. So you can't, I would say that the editing of your first draft is not really, I call it first fix editing. Like in a house build, you have the first 6 guys come around, the electricians and the plumbers and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then they come back later on and finish their bits. So I have what I call a first fix editing, which really comes down to checking it's all there, checking it hangs together, working out what's wrong, which bits are missing, mm-hmm. And so on. So that's a different mindset. It's a bit like being a developmental editor of your own work. The developmental editor doesn't worry about the sentences. They just worry about the characters and the general gist of the story and that kind of, big topics, really.
Yeah.
But yes, you must finish the whole thing before you go back. Otherwise, thankfully, you will never finish it. Brilliant.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, well, thank you. I'm glad I asked that question. Moving to your next tip then.
Tip 3 was I think you need to keep your eyes wide open to what's ahead. So if you embark on the process of writing a novel, you need to know that the writing is only the tip of that iceberg. Mathematically speaking, I think that's a ninth of the whole job if it's an iceberg tip. But basically, as well as the editing, which is a big job, you've also got marketing. You might have to write a blog to make yourself become a known person, if you like, before anyone's going to even want to buy your book. You might do things through social media. You might have personal appearances. You might appear on summits like this, so people know who you are. But in order for all that to happen, you have to connect with people. I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head how we first connected, but it's way back, and it would have been some little tenuous link somewhere. And then you invited me, and I said yes, and there you go. It's the same with all relationships that you have in the marketing world. You meet people at a conference, you meet them online, you meet them in a Facebook group or wherever, and you get to know them a little bit, and then you get to know them a little bit more. Well, the readers have to do that with the author. The author needs to meet lots of people, meet lots of readers, potential readers of their book, before the book's actually even published. So all that groundwork needs to be done. And I reckon it can take a couple of years to actually become known enough for people to say, oh, really? She's published a book. Oh, wow, I'd like to have a look at that.
You know, so yeah, I'd love to just segue a second here or go off of this for a minute, because one of the things that I talk a lot about with my clients is how important that setting the groundwork of you as an author is, which as important as writing your book. So I'm really glad to hear you repeat that idea that it can take years, because so many authors just expect that the instant their book is published, they're going to be these successes. And the reality is, stick to it, keep with it, do the legwork. Don't get upset if it takes, because it takes time for all of us. Nobody's an overnight success. Even the overnight successes put in a lot of work prior to that overnight success.
Right, that's right. You know, I started blogging. The Scrivener Virgin blog started in October or September 2015. That's a good 3 years ago now. And I was blogging every Monday, and I've done it every Monday ever since. And, you know, you're shoving it out there. You're not sure if anyone's even listening or watching or anything. And I started doing my Scrivener Virgin tips. And about a year after I started, in a Facebook group somewhere, and I think it was a self-publishing tool, somebody asked a question, and the person wrote, "Ask Anne Rainbow. She's the Scrivener expert." I went, yes! Wow! You know, when you're recommended by somebody else to somebody to come to you, then you know you've arrived, as it were. I then had to work out the answer to the question. I didn't actually know the answer to the question, so I had to quickly do some research, and then I could answer it. But if you're an author, you want people to know, what is it? Know, like, and trust. They've got to know who you are. They've got to like the look of you, the sound of you, that you're on the same wavelength. They've got to trust you enough to think, yeah, I'd be happy to read her book. It sounds interesting, sounds exciting. So that doesn't happen, as you say, it doesn't happen overnight. And the ones who, the ones who are the overnight successes, as you say, have probably been at it for 10 years. Right. In the darkness. Exactly. And then suddenly, whoosh, they come out. Exactly.
So, yes. Yes, none of those books were just written and published in a weekend and then became $1 million books. So never. we have to reframe our expectations and think about things like this. But all right, great. Next tip.
Next tip is, I think it's really important that you know your own comfort zone. I've been working with a lot of writers this last year where they're happy with their writing, but they're not at all happy with other aspects of the journey at all. They don't have much technical expertise, shall we say. So if you know what you're happy with doing, you could expand it. You could actually learn some new stuff, or you need to turn for professional help. So you might need to invest some time and maybe some money in learning how to self-edit. I think that's a real bottom line, definite. But what about designing your cover? Now, I do knock up a cover for my Nano. I use InDesign. I'm not brilliant at it, but I can knock something up. I wouldn't dream of making the cover of my book, because there are people out there who are brilliant at it, and you know I haven't got the years left in me to learn how to become a cover designer, and it's all those ideas and what have you. So if it's something you think you're half good at, you might do a little bit of technical training and you might try and do it yourself. But the odds are you really ought to hire a professional.
Mhm.
And so things like, setting up a landing page, setting up a website. If you're good at that kind of stuff, terrific. If you're not, seek help. Get some professional help. Use professionals all the time. When somebody says, "Oh, I made this mistake once," a friend of a friend had a son who was going to go into web design, and she said, "Would you mind giving him something as a project?" I said, "Yeah, sure." What a mess. What a mess. And I had to undig it out. I mean, I could have set up my own website, but I just didn't have the time. I thought, yeah, he can do that. But no, go to the people who know what they're doing and use them. You'll have to pay for their skills, but it's because they've spent years training
That's
and they've
exactly
bought the
right.
expertise. You're buying expertise, and that will make your product look more professional. So you shouldn't skimp. You choose the best. And what will end up is that you look like you're part of a professional team.
Hmm.
It might be actually you're the weakest link in that team because you're the newbie writer. But if you've got a good designer for your book and you've got somebody good looking at your website and what have you, that will make life so much easier for you. So don't, I do find people say, "Oh, I can't possibly afford to have someone design my book." Well, don't publish it then, because frankly, your design is going to not work. It
Yeah,
won't sell it.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
the reason these designers have got a job is because they're good at it.
Yes.
And they
And
deserve to be paid.
and a really good cover designer too is going to know what's popular and what's trending. And there are some things that may have been super popular covers 5 years ago that now are just out. So, and
Yeah,
you have to know
absolutely.
the genre. If you write murder mysteries, and I was talking about this with another guest yesterday when we were doing our interview. If you want to do something that's new and fun and creative, that's great, but your readers will not appreciate it because they know to look for a certain style, a certain, and we don't think about this, but they know their genre, they know what's normal, they know what to look for, and they don't like necessarily something that is not normal.
People don't like change.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, even if you reorganize a shop and have the books in a different place,
Yes,
that's not a good
exactly.
plan. Not a good plan.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, as I say, if your aspiration is to have lots of books over the next however many years, and this is your first one you're going out there, don't do it on the cheap. Do it as if this is part of your long-term professional goal. So, but be perfectly aware of what you're comfortable doing and what you can't yet do. Try to learn how to do, because things like
Mhm.
just doing a book signing, it's not a doddle. You know, what are you going to wear? What are you going to say? What are they going to do in the shop? Who's going to be looking after you? Do you get any coffee? Where are the loos? There's a million things to know about, and you've got to stand there looking all comfortable and relaxed, and actually inside your stomach's going some. So practicing, how to do it, and getting help from people who've done it before is really important, I think.
Mhm.
So yeah, know your own comfort zone.
Mhm. That's a great tip.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a great tip. Do you
yeah.
have any more tips, or was that
I
was that your
have one,
final one?
I've one last tip for you, basically,
Okay.
and I feel really strongly about this one because I quite often am working, and in fact, I've got two writers at the moment who've been with me about 18 months, and they joined me saying, "I want to write this, I want to finish this novel, and I want to publish it." I said, "Fine, that's your project. I'll help you. I'll nag you solid until you do it." Okay, so that's my job. I nag them. But when you look back at their motivation, they didn't actually have it, I don't think, planted properly. So what I would say, you need to ask yourself, why are you writing this book?
Mhm.
If it's just because you've never finished anything in your life and you'd like to finish something, don't make that a book. Make choose something else. Don't make it a book. It's a very long road from getting the idea in the first place and thinking it's a brilliant idea to actually getting it published. Even if you self-publish, it's a long road, and you need passion, you need determination. If you're in it just for the money, if you're thinking, "Oh, I'm going to become a best-selling author and then we're going to be able to retire to the Caribbean," I think you'll be in for quite a disappointing time. I think you really will. I met someone only a few days ago who said that their plan, her and her husband's plan, is that she's going to give up her full-time job. She's going to write, and then he can retire and they can live off her earnings. Not sure. So don't just do it for the money. If you start from assuming you earn nothing, just assume you're going to earn absolutely nothing from this, and ask yourself, why are you bothering to write this book? Do you have something important to say, something mega important to say? Do you have something you want to share? You've been on some kind of journey, you've had some realization. They're really quite good books. They inspire people. Is it something that others want to know about? Because what you want to say might not be what someone else wants to hear. You may be talking to yourself, basically. And it has to be something that will enrich their lives. Now, because a book is a communication tool, it takes two to tango. You write it, they read it, they pay for it, and then they read it. So you not only have to have a good idea and a passion to do it and staying power and all that stuff, you have to have a market into which that book is going to land and be well received. Then maybe, just maybe, you'll see the financial rewards. But the number of people I meet who say, I'm going to write my memoir. One particular chap, who sadly passed away now, but while his wife was ill and he was caring for her, he thought he'd write their story, their memoir. And he wrote thousands and thousands of words. And then he was struggling and he asked me for help. And he was convinced that everyone is going to buy this book. Honestly, his family didn't even want to read it.
Oh.
So although he, laid out his whole life in that book, and sadly his wife passed away while he was still writing it, then he changed it a bit and he wrote loads about her. It did him a power of good to write it, but nobody wants to read it. I think maybe he hasn't, he's moved away from me. I think he's now in a care home, but maybe when he has gone, his kids might read it and think, oh, I didn't know that about Dad. And thank goodness he wrote it down. But it was never going to be a bestseller. Right. It was never going to be a bestseller. Right. But he hoped it would be. So I quite often come across writers who have this vision of all I have to do is finish the book and publish it, and then I'm going to earn mega. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that.
Very rarely. Very rarely. Oh, wow. Well, those were all really good tips. A little bit like some tough love there, I mean, but it's good to know. I mean, I think it's so important that people come into it with the right expectations, but also understanding that if you are following the right path, if you are doing the right things, if you are, and a little bit of writing to what people will buy and not so much what you want to write about. If the big sales are your goal, I mean, some books are just passion projects, and that's okay too. I mean, the fact that he wrote that book, like you said, it was cathartic. It was wonderful for him, and it will be a great gift to his children, even if they don't recognize that now. I wish more than anything my dad had written his biography, his autobiography, even though no one would have bought it probably. But he had lived a fascinating life, and I'm so sad that I don't have more of those details now that he's gone. But that's a total segue here. But, it is important that when you come into the writing world, you realize it's just like any other art. And no artist paints a perfect painting the first time and has it in the Louvre immediately upon painting. No singer winds up with a multi-platinum album after they've sung their first song. And writers should not expect that their first book is going to be, a New York Times bestseller. But keep at it. Use these types of tips and tools. Be realistic. Know your goals. Know where you're going.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can have great success.
And so you have to have your eyes open to what's going on. Use the professional people around you to help you. People who've already done it before, and they know what it's about. They've been there. They've got the T-shirt. Listen to what they say. Don't think, oh, yeah, but I can do it. I can manage it without having to do that. And a lot of it comes down to hard work. And this is where I think the editing really sinks some people, because they write the book and they really don't want to edit it. They just enjoyed the writing bit. They don't want to do the editing bit. Right. But I think if you learn how to do self-editing, you actually learn how to be a better writer. That's what
absolutely.
So just do it. I mean, you might get to the point where you're such an amazing writer that you can employ an editor and forget it, because you're such an amazing writer. But most people I come across, it would really help them to study the editing side, because they would then write better.
Absolutely. I agree. All right. Well, tell us about, so you told us about the Red Pen writing book, but you also are a fiction writer. I mean, sorry, the editing book. You're also a fiction writer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So where can people find out more about you, your services, and your books?
Okay. So scrivenervirgin.com is the website. So that's where I blog every Monday, and that has links to everything else that's going on. So you can join the Red Pen brigade, if you like, from there. There's a kind of zero cost option to join, just become a member. That allows you to have access to all the previous recordings of the Simply Scrivener specials that I do on a Tuesday night. So that's like a mini course. You can just watch them and learn stuff, and you can ask questions, and I'll answer questions if you're there. So that's the website itself. There's also Scrivener Virgin on Facebook, and I publish tips. I haven't done today's tip yet. I need to do today's tip, but basically, I tend to publish a tip every day, sharing good news about Scrivener. I'm very passionate about people using Scrivener because it makes things so much easier to get a good, well-written book can be done in Scrivener. And as to my fiction, my novels are all kind of under wraps because I decided that I would wait. Well, I need to wait till a few people die before I publish some of my stuff.
Aha.
I think
I have a few books like that under my belt too.
And the thing is, I write my books in Nano because I enjoy the exercise. I can edit at leisure if you like, but also because I use my novels as examples for my writers groups I do. So I show them the first draft and say, look, this is pretty rubbish. It just came out of my fingers onto my keyboard. Look, this is what I call the first draft. Let's improve it together. So I use my first draft as part of my material. I can't really ask other writers, can you give me some of your rubbish writing so that we can work on it?
I'm not sure that would be a popular way to be part of the course.
So I'm always using my writing as, look, this is how it starts, but this is how it can end. So this is how you can improve your own writing. And that way, because I'm sharing mine, I think they feel more comfortable if they share theirs and so on. But eventually, I do plan to publish. Funnily enough, a couple of weeks ago, I did a blog post about when ideas come into your head, where you should put them during Nano. It's interrupting your Nano thought. And I was thinking, I've got to write this blog post. I've got to think of some ideas to come into my head. And I realized my last 3 Nano novels are about 3 different women, similar situations but different outcomes. And I decided that the 4th book could be the 3 of them meeting up and sharing what they have learned and what they've done since. And I suddenly thought, I've now got a 4-book, whatever you call a 4 books, not trilogy, whatever
series.
A 4-book is.
Series.
All I've got to do is finish those books and put them together. And then maybe I'll publish them next year, year after, whatever. I'm not in any hurry to publish. I've got down behind me, you can't see here, but underneath that bookcase, there's a whole shelf of my published books, but they're maths and IT textbooks. And so I'm over the excitement of having a book published. I get excited by other things. I get excited when one of my authors, one of my mentees, says to me, my book 1 has gone into the publisher. It's with a developmental editor. Yes.
It is exciting.
That's when I get my buzz.
That's great.
Thanks.
Well, these have been fantastic tips, and I really appreciate the opportunity to dig out of just talking about editing, because we have a lot of people that will talk about how you work with an editor and all that kind of stuff, and it's nice to take it back to the actual, like, what can I do as a writer to improve my writing and to make sure that it's good, because and you mentioned a great point. Like, I almost always look at it from the perspective of self-publishing, but for the people who are planning to pitch to an agent or a publisher, like, you really can't just pitch them a mess. Like, and even though they're going to edit your book, like I've heard many people say they actually have their book professionally edited prior to submitting it to a house, even though the house will then once again edit it. So I appreciate the fact that you brought that up too, that it really, really has to be in great shape before you even start pitching it. Because you're right. An agent gets it and reads the first paragraph and it's a mess. Then they're like, I got 50,000 other submissions yesterday. Moving along.
Precisely. And if you go for competition, if you put something into a competition, and I've done this, I've judged competitions before now, that you get a whole pile of stuff. If you read 3 sentences and there's no punctuation, you don't read any further.
Right.
So unless it grabs you, you're not contract bound to read to the end of something you know is not going to win.
Right.
So the agents are saying they're busy people. Right. You're lucky to actually have it in their hand. So if you've managed that, why scotch it by not having worked on it before?
Exactly.
It's silly.
All right. Well, this was fantastic information. Make sure you head on over to scrivenervirgin.com, right?
Absolutely.
And find Anne, find all the places that you can follow her, get on her free tips list, check out her Monday blogs, do all that kind of stuff so that you can, when you're ready to go to the next step with your book, you have a much better book than where it started.
Right. And I think you said when we first spoke, if I had anything special to give to your viewers.
Yes.
Now, at this precise second, when we're talking, I don't have it ready, but by the time this goes live, I'll make sure I've got a special self-editing course
Great.
7 days or 10 days, something just to people get their teeth into. So if they would like to do that, they can do it free of charge at the moment.
Wow, that's a fantastic gift. Sign me up. I'll be there. All right. Thank you, Anne. I appreciate you as always.
That's very well. Thank you very much for inviting. I really enjoyed talking with you.